Will the Chronicler ever break free from Mikhail Rasputin's control? And considering how Mikhail Rasputin's plan to destroy the mutants at the Hellfire Gala backfired so tremendously, what are the chances his plot against ORCHIS goes any better? What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, I'm gonna be talking about X-Force number 45, written by Benjamin Percy, with art by Robert Gill and color by Guru FX. If you have been reading X-Force since day one, if you were one of those people who has been waiting, absolutely positively waiting, for Mikhail Rasputin to slip up, this is probably the issue you've been waiting on. The reason why I say that is because the Chronicler, and this isn't really a surprise considering everything else has been going on to this point, the Chronicler has been trying to get out from under Mikhail Rasputin for quite a while. Like, if you go back through all of the issues of X-Force, he has been trying to escape Mikhail Rasputin's grasp for no less than a dozen issues. And that's honestly me being generous. It's actually probably been closer to 20 issues. But that said, what is going on here is that the Chronicler has been angling for a way to get away from Mikhail Rasputin. If you haven't checked out my video for the previous issue of X-Force, number 44, there's a link in the description up here. You can go check it out. In the previous issue, one of the things I mused about was that there was going to be a change of who the Chronicler was going to be focusing on. He was going to be shifting his focus from controlling Colossus with his reality warping capabilities and now focus on someone within ORCHIS. And there were a lot of different prospects that he could have gone after, but ultimately he chose to go up against one that was not a part of the main pack. He didn't want someone who was a major player. He wanted someone who was more of a supporting cast member, and not even really a supporting cast member. It's one of those deals too, and I love how Benjamin Percy frames all of this. He does it by way of describing other literary works and how the person that the story is technically about is not the person who you're viewing the story through the lens of. You're usually viewing the story through someone else who isn't even half as important as the main character. And that's kind of where he's coming from with this, is that he doesn't want Nimrod or Moira McTaggart or Omega Sentinel or anyone like that. No, he wants a bit part player, someone who has been in the background. And I actually thought about it. I kind of went back to see if maybe I had seen this character before, and I'm pretty sure I have, just in random spots, or maybe it's just their first appearance. It's hard to say at this point, but a character by the name of Jun Way, someone who works with ORCHIS strictly by virtue of the fact that mutants were largely responsible for her parents' death. All we know that the events of what happened to Jun Way's parents very likely coincided with the original Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, as when we're given a list of the characters who were present that day, we see a lot of the names you would typically associate with the Brotherhood. Characters like Magneto, Toad, and Scarlet Witch. So that basically lets you know that this was literally early days Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, even predating 1964's X-Men number 4, because another character by the name of Astra is included in this. And for those who are unfamiliar, the character Astra never actually appeared in any of the original X-Men comics. Astra didn't make her first appearance in comics until 1999's Uncanny X-Men number 366, but she was retconned into existence, having been cited as someone who was one of the original members of the Brotherhood. So this should let you know how far back all of this goes. But one of the things I like about what's going on here is that, yeah, he's taking this person who's always around but never actually the focal point. So it would make it easier for her to manipulate things behind the scenes, despite the fact that she's not in charge. She could just push things in certain directions that are needed and be more subtle than taking over one of the top 5 people in ORCHIS and then that person suddenly acting strange and it just being incredibly obvious something was wrong. This is actually given further credence when you just look at who they used as their shadow puppet to infiltrate the Quiet Council. They used Colossus. Colossus isn't someone who is of any major import if you go by comparison of the other characters that are on the Quiet Council or were on the Quiet Council. when he joined. It's not to say Colossus is a bad character or anything, but just being real. When you look at the names and hitters that are on the Quiet Council, characters like Charles Xavier, Magneto, the artist formerly known as Apocalypse at one point, as well as characters like Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw, we've seen Mr. Sinister, Exodus. These are all characters who have lots of influence in the Marvel Comics universe, at least in the corner of the X-Men. Colossus isn't that kind of a guy. He's not that big of a hitter in that regard. Now, one could make the case that, yeah, well, you could say the same about Nightcrawler. But once again, Colossus is the least likely suspect because, for the most part, despite the fact that Colossus did break bad a couple of times in his publication history, he is considered a gentle giant. Who would suspect Colossus of being a shadow puppet for anyone? But what I like about this is that this once again gives us a little bit more insight into how the Chronicler's powers work, because when Mikhail Rasputin sends Colossus to retrieve Jun Way, one of the things that I found interesting is that as the Chronicler is talking to Jun Way, it gives us a very interesting idea of how he manipulated Colossus, because that was something I talked about in the previous video. For X-Force number 44, I wondered exactly how it was he built up his rapport with Colossus, and now we know that it's something that just happens naturally. He has some kind of an aura around him that compels people to enjoy his company, to feel like they can open up to him. I don't think it's something that's just always on, because if it was, because otherwise Mikhail Rasputin would have been able to keep him held hostage all this time. But the Chronicler proves he can easily get anyone to tell him anything. We see immediately, despite the fact that Jun Way is incredibly antagonistic towards Mikhail Rasputin, she almost immediately warms up to the Chronicler, even mentioning so much that she wants to tell him everything. Despite the fact that she knows better, she knows she doesn't want to help him or give him any information. She knows that they're mutants and she hates mutants. She probably has more of a right to hate mutants than just about anyone else in ORCHIS right now, but she still wants to open up to the Chronicler. And this is honestly what gives the Chronicler his way out, because as we talked about before, when the Chronicler changes his focus on an individual, especially one that he has been focusing on for a long time, like Colossus, when he takes his focus away from that person and he implies that he must finish their story, bring it to its natural conclusion before he can let them go. If he lets them go too early, it's very possible that they could die or at best be trapped in some kind of a coma-like state for the rest of their lives, which is effectively not much better than death. When he switches over to Jun Way, the good news is nothing happens to Colossus. Mikhail Rasputin simply banishes Colossus away to another one of his many pocket dimensions, because for those who are unfamiliar, and I do appreciate that Benjamin Percy did this, I've actually talked about Mikhail Rasputin's powers in the past, but for those who are unfamiliar, Mikhail Rasputin can literally shape space however he sees fit. He is a reality warper in and of himself, but in a very different fashion. You almost kind of want to think of Mikhail Rasputin as a sort of alchemist, but instead of like spinning straw into gold or transforming one piece of matter into something else, he does this on a different level with space. Mikhail is able to manipulate space into a completely different type of space. He can create negative space where there would normally be positive, and very likely he can do the opposite of that. This is how he's able to create these pocket dimensions and spaces where something should exist and yet nothing does. We've seen him do this multiple times over the course of his publication history, but especially in Benjamin Percy's X-Force, we've seen Mikhail Rasputin create these dark pockets of reality multiple times, putting people in them and then taking them out later. His ability to do this is virtually unmatched. We really haven't seen many other characters able to do this on the same level as him, which begs the question whether or not he might have just been quietly upgraded from an alpha level mutant to possibly an omega level mutant, but we don't really have hard evidence on that just yet. The only evidence we have that would make me believe that Mikhail Rasputin is an omega level mutant is that Doctor Strange seems to be of the belief that Mikhail Rasputin's power is unlimited. And as we know in the House of X era, a mutant's power having no upper limit is a prerequisite for being considered an omega level mutant. His ability to warp space in and around himself kind of makes him a pretty busted character. But the thing that's going to be Mikhail Rasputin's downfall is that, wait, where am I? Why is it so dark in here? What?
You thought you could talk greasy about me, American. You were wrong. The only way you will escape this pocket dimension is if your so-called Earth's mightiest subscribers click the like button, because at this point, they're still watching. The video is almost halfway over. Clearly, they like the video. If they do not click like, I will close this pocket dimension around you and crush you like the ant that you are. And also, if they have not done so already, they will click subscribe and tap the notification bell. If they do not, your precious fearless Blerd is dead.
Please, you have to do what he says. I can't go out like this. Oh, man. Thank you. Back to the video. The thing that's going to be Mikhail Rasputin's downfall is that now that he's taken his focus off of Colossus and had the Chronicler place their focus more on Jun Way, the thing that he didn't prepare for is that the Chronicler already plotted out Mikhail Rasputin's demise, using Jun Way to try to fatally shoot Mikhail Rasputin. And this is what kind of sends everything that Mikhail Rasputin has been plotting into a spiral. Because one of the things that's brought up when Domino and Sage are conversing with Doctor Strange over all of the recent events that have happened since the fall of X and how to tackle a problem like Mikhail Rasputin, because going back to the previous issue, the ring that Domino stole, it was one of those things that I didn't really know exactly what it was at first, but the more I kept looking at it, the more it became obvious, and the story confirmed it in this issue, that this was basically a way for Mikhail Rasputin to either get to a person who wore that ring, or a way to bring that person to him, because it was, for all intents and purposes, a portal into a pocket dimension Mikhail Rasputin had created. But one of the things that Doctor Strange brings up in this issue is that this requires some level of concentration. Like, someone would have to be focusing on this on some level, and once Mikhail Rasputin is shot, clearly his focus is elsewhere, meaning any pocket dimensions that he's created are starting to collapse. And the question now becomes, what happens to the people in those pocket dimensions? Are they crushed or are they expelled? And while we don't get an answer for what was going on with characters like Omega Red and Wolverine, as well as Kid Omega, we don't get an answer about that. But what we do know is that wherever Mikhail Rasputin is now, because he himself has escaped into one of his pocket dimensions, we know that Colossus is okay, because the pocket dimension he escapes into is the one where Colossus is presently. Now, we don't know where it's going to go from there, because now Colossus knows everything that's been going on. I don't know if this was because of the Chronicler or not, but there were painting supplies left in that pocket dimension, and Colossus ends up painting pretty much a rough idea of everything that has happened, how he's been manipulated by his brother, how he has been used to effectively orchestrate the downfall of Krakoa, which, to be fair, he's not responsible for the overall downfall of Krakoa, but he is ultimately responsible for pushing the Quiet Council to release the Sinister Files, showcasing to humanity all the crazy ish that was happening during Sins of Sinister. At the end of the day, the Chronicler proved he was playing the longer game than Mikhail Rasputin. He was just biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment. But the real question is, what is the Chronicler gonna do next? Because just like Omega Red, Wolverine, and Kid Omega, as well as all the Russian nesting doll soldiers, they're all locked away in one of Mikhail Rasputin's pocket dimensions as well. So the Chronicler and Jun Way, while Jun Way is literally threatening to kill him in this precise moment, the pocket dimension collapsing is clearly going to change what trajectory they take on that. And I honestly don't think that Jun Way is going to change her opinion on mutants overnight, but I do hope that the Chronicler is able to actually manipulate her just a little bit more to keep her on his side so that he can get away. And I'm also hoping that, because this is one of those things where I feel like a lot of people are probably going to expect the Chronicler to be able to rewrite reality to make it to where the mutants win. I don't think he's going to be able to do that, not on any massive scale. However, I do wonder, once X-Force is able to get all hands back on deck, if they're able to get to the Chronicler, I am wondering if Domino and Sage are going to find a way to put the Chronicler's power to work, but for them. Maybe take Mikhail Rasputin's plan to manipulate an Orchis agent to affect change in Orchis from the outside in. And I think that might be what Benjamin Percy is angling for, because once again, all players are going to be present. Jun Way is still going to be there. Now, granted, it's going to suck for Jun Way because she's probably going to lose some agency here, but ultimately, I think that's perfectly fine. She seems like a terrible person, despite the fact that she kind of has a reason to be. It's one of those situations where I kind of get why she is the way she is. Her parents were the collateral damage of an attack by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and she took that personally. But I don't think that excuses prejudice of any kind, so honestly, that is more on her than it is anyone else. So with that being said, I feel like that would be the best move. Sage and Domino taking what they have, taking the Chronicler, using his power for their own ends to help save mutant kind. I think that's the way. Take Jun Way, you already have her right there, send her back to ORCHIS as if nothing ever happened because they don't even know that she's gone, and start using her to push things in the direction that they need to go in order for ORCHIS to fall. But anyways, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any of my videos as well as my live streams every Saturday. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about X-Force number 45. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.